to this edition of Outside the Echo Chamber, coming to you from the Frontier Studios, Charleston Gazette Mail, home of powered by HD Media. Hey, listen, we got a lot going on. You know, as your host, Doug Scaff, we can't stop talking about election season and talking about the candidates and the amendments and everything happening. But early voting has come and gone. So if you haven't voted, Tuesday, November 8th is your day to cast your ballot for all your favorite candidates, all the amendments. Tuesday, November 8th, midterm election 2022. A lot of early voting, a lot of people out there, as you can see right there in the picture. Early voting has concluded. The numbers are in, just over 70,000 people, I believe, early voted across the state, roughly, based on that was based on data of November 2nd, Secretary of State's website. Election officials, they've been gearing up. Kanawha County, Vera McCormick, she met with the Democratic and Republican ballot commissioners so they could kind of test the voting machines, the kits, make sure everything was working properly for Election Day. Turnout is expected to be light, and let's not underestimate, however, the importance of getting out and voting in this midterm election. With a number of key races up on the ballot, we have a lot of amendment issues as well, and we're going to be talking to a few people about that. But first up, I'm really excited to have Mark Blankenship. Mark Blankenship of Mark Blankenship Enterprises is here today. Man behind the polls, the number man, kind of, you know it all. Before, during, and then you go back and reassess after and see what everything ended up. Mark, welcome to the show again.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate being here.
You know, we talked about voter turnout. Let's start there. That's an easy one for you. Voter turnout. You know, all the kind of, I don't know, the chatter is going to be very light. Are you seeing the same thing?
Yeah, and you know, I don't know that that's an easy question because this year is the first year in a couple of decades, a long time that West Virginia has not had. It's not a presidential election year. We have no U.S. Senate candidate. We have no gubernatorial candidate, right? And those three races are generally the races that motivate a lot of turnout. So I think based on the fact that the absence of those races, people are predicting lower turnout. And I think that's probably true. You'll have pockets of higher turnout. I think Charleston will probably outpace the rest of the state, But I think you're probably looking at 42% turnout, something like that. That's the best guess at this point. And, you know, look, I think it's probably going to be relatively low compared to other states. States like Florida have a U.S. Senate race, a gubernatorial race going on at the same time. Their turnout's going to be much higher than ours. Pennsylvania, Dr. Oz and Fetterman. Ohio, Vance and his opponent.
Tim Ryan.
Tim Ryan. Yeah. You've got races around us that are real competitive, and those things are going to motivate turnout. In West Virginia, for the first time in a couple of decades, we don't have those just because of the nature of the election cycle.
No, that makes sense. You know, and we've seen data that shows it's fairly even. You know, around 42%. I think Democrats came out early voted, and you have about 37%, I believe, on the Republican side.
That's pretty typical in terms of the early vote. And what I think will happen at the end of the day, now you get a lot of people that say, "Oh, well, what does lower turnout mean for this race or for that race?" I think Republicans will turn out at or near their registration. I think Democrats will turn out at or near their registration, right? So I think it's going to be low, but I think that they're going to be proportionate to what their registration
is.
Well,
you know, you hit the nail on the head, and there's a lot of different issues on the ballot, not just candidates. This year we have 4 constitutional amendments on the ballot. Maybe the first time in a while we've had actually 4, and there's 2 in particular getting a lot of chatter. You have Amendment 2. And then Amendment 4. Let's start with Amendment 2. Amendment 2 talks about everything from who's in control of the money and the tax revenue collected by the county and the local municipalities, or should it be left to them to decide? Or should it be left to the legislature to decide? You've heard a lot. Even the governor's been going around giving his stump sheet of what he feels about. What's your take on Amendment 2? Has there been polling done? Do you have a take of talking to some of the businesses in the community that you work with? Or is that another?
There has been polling done. Now, I will precursor all of this by saying polling amendments and ballot measures is a lot more challenging than polling a race, Doug Scaff versus Mark Blankenship for dog catcher.
It'll be a toss-up.
Yeah, amendments are tougher, and the way that they're typically done the best is when they just read what the actual ballot amendment says. Right, because that's what the voter's going to read when he or she gets into a voter booth. They're going to read the actual amendment. make their decision and vote yay or nay. So you try to be as close or as approximate when you're polling those things as what the actual ballot's going to say. A couple of these amendments are this long,
Yeah.
so it can be a little bit tough. I think that Amendment 2, I hear a lot of people say, well, do voters really understand? Do they really know? I think that doesn't give voters enough credit. I think voters certainly understand it and what's going on. And if there's been any good in this, it's that Governor Justice and the people who
The other side, yeah.
on the other side, Senator Blair and Senator Tarr and those folks, they've been doing a really good job at getting out in the public and educating voters on those subjects. How it's going to go, I think right now it's probably a really tight. I mean, we got 1 day left before voting closes tomorrow. I think it's really, really close, and I'm hesitant to say I think it's going to go one way or the other, but I think it's going to be a tight election. I really do, on Amendment 2.
So you got Amendment 2, talk about machinery, inventory, and tax, and then also giving the legislator the power to either do away with those, change them, or modify. Then you also have Amendment 4.
Yeah.
Now, Amendment 4 is another controversial one, kind of shifting of power, so to speak, of who controls our education, our public education system.
Right.
Amendment 4 is getting not as much attention, but almost it seems like it has much chatter. So what do you think happens with Amendment 4? Have you heard anything about that?
That one's a little bit more clear to me. I think that the passage of Amendment 4 has a steeper hill to climb. Right now, I think that, at this late hour, I think that most voters are inclined to vote against it. And I get a lot of questions about, well, why is that? And this goes back to how the ballot reads, how the ballot initiative reads, the amendment reads. And it basically says, the legislature is going to have rulemaking authority over the State Board of Education, right? Most voters, and you see this a lot, believe that the education system should be independent of politics. Now, the people who support Amendment 4 say, well, this helps it be independent of politics, right? It broadens it out and makes it more accountable to the legislature, which is the direct line of political power of the people, right? We directly elect our senators and our delegates, so our senators and delegates should at least have the ability to make rules or govern the rules that govern the education system. But I think that there's some skepticism among voters who think, we don't want the education system to be politicized.
Right.
Whether that's what the amendment does or not, but I think that that's the initial inclination of voters.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. But the issue is you have 4 big amendments. You have to read them. Do they go into the votes? I would like the voters to be educated as much as they can. And you can go out to the Secretary of State's website. You can actually go out. They have a great new tool out there. You can go type your name, type your date of birth, and it actually pops up on the govotewv.com or .org, and it'll pop up your actual sample ballot. You can even click on it like you're voting.
Read the amendment.
You can read the amendments, and you can even print it out. And you can print out how you voted and take it in with you as a kind of a reference tool. So that's a great tool. We had Deke on here talking about that the other day. It's a great tool.
The newspapers and the media, they're doing a pretty good job at covering this and writing about Amendment 2 and Amendment 4 in very detailed ways.
And editorials. It's been editorialized on both sides of the issue. So giving a chance for the people to speak and ask questions, and I think it's been great. And this is what governance should be.
It should be.
It should be asking questions, editorialized, talking about, chatter, educating the public. Hey, all right, so everyone's talking about, we got a lot of races on the ballot this year.
We do.
This is the first time we've had 100 single-member House of Delegate districts. So it seems like just when the voters understand what district number they're in, we change the numbers
we
on,
switch
right?
it up.
So we have 100 single-member districts, and that's probably too hard to tell. Probably not a lot of polling because of the numbers so small. Is that correct when it comes to the House of Delegate races?
It can be, and I think that what it will do is voters are now going to a ballot and they're voting on one race,
One-on-one, yeah.
A Democrat and a Republican, or a write-in, obviously. Between, again, like I said earlier, it's very clear now. It will be Doug Scaff versus Mark Blankenship for dog catcher, and that's it. You're not going to be able to vote
those
for
multi-member districts. We're talking about
you could vote for up to four people,
and sometimes certain issues wouldn't affect people the same way. It wouldn't carry the same weight, but now in a one-on-one race, and now it comes down to get to know that candidate, get to know the person who you're actually voting
which is
for.
why I like it, because eventually after a couple of cycles, the voter is going to say, well, Doug Scaff is my member in the House of Delegates, so I'll call him.
And hold him accountable as well.
And talk to him and share my concerns with him or whoever the delegate is. I think that's a good thing.
So on the House of Delegates side, we have 100 new districts across the state. Now let's flip over to the Senate side for a minute. The Senate side, same thing, new district numbers. We changed that because after the census data came in and we redistricted and everything, there's been a couple races out there that a lot of people have kind of have their eye on. One is Senate District 7. Okay, that's here. Senator Ron Stallings, who's been in office a few years now. He's the Democrat running against a challenger and former U.S. District Attorney Mike Stewart.
Yeah.
What's your take on that race?
I think that's going to be, if it's not the most competitive state Senate race in West Virginia, it's among the top 1, 2, or 3. And I think, so look at it from each candidate's perspective. Ron Stallings has been a state senator for 15, 16 years, whatever it is. He's a physician in Boone County. And those things work in his favors. People like doctors. They just do, and they like doctors. They trust doctors. And he's developed a little bit of a brand. He's got some what I would call image equity in that district. Those are the things that work in his favor. What works against him? Well, he's a Democrat in a district that Donald Trump won by 35%. He's in a district where Republicans have made huge gains over the last 3, 4 election cycles. Mike Stewart, on the other hand, he's an attorney. He was a United States attorney, and he was appointed to that U.S. attorney role by Donald Trump. So, I think it's very competitive. I think that Mike Stewart, sort of started probably a little bit down, but that's because he wasn't the incumbent. And he's worked real hard and I think made the race a whole lot more competitive than it was 2, 3, 4 months ago. So that one's going to be one to watch, and I think that's going to be one of the key races, whether the Republicans get up to 28, 29 seats in the state Senate, which will be more than they've had since the Great Depression. And I think that race, watching that on election night, will kind of tell you how good of a night it's going to be for Republicans tomorrow night.
And that's in that newer district as well too. So it's newer not just for Mike Stewart, but also a little bit for Ron Stallings too. Even though he's from down there in Boone County, Logan,
stretches
Lincoln,
from South Charleston to Madison,
to Madison,
and Logan.
So another Senate district, actually close touches Kanawha County as well, is District 8. It's a newer Senate district where you have current sitting Democrat Senator Rich Lindsay and former Democrat turned Republican, new candidate now, Mark Hunt.
Right.
That district touches Kanawha County, kind of stretches up into a new area as well as Jackson Mason County as well. What do you think of that one?
Just like I said about the Stewart-Stallings race, this is probably in the top 2 or 3 most competitive races in the state. Mark Hunt, a former Democrat turned Republican, but a very well-known guy. I mean, he's run for Congress. He's run for state Senate. I think he was in the House of Delegates too.
For a few years, at least 6 years.
So people are familiar with him. His what we call name ID is significant, and his opponent is the minority leader of the West Virginia State Senate. He's one of the top Democrats. So they're both well-funded campaigns, and they've both been working real hard. The district leans a little bit Republican. But it's not solidly red. I mean, it's not like some of the districts around here. It leans a little red, but it can go blue, obviously, by electing Lindsay. I think that right now that race is probably, give or take 2 points one way or the other. I think that's going to be another.
Depends on voter turnout, who comes out to vote, right? So shifting gears for a second, any other races across the state you really have your eye on? You mentioned 2 to 3 really tight races. Is there any others that maybe might sneak up on us that we're not really thinking about?
No, I think that the Oliverio Flesh Hour race in Mon County will be, I mean, you've got 2 really well-known people and really 2 polar opposite folks on the political spectrum. But it's also in a district that leans a little bit blue, leans a little bit Democrat. So I think that one's going to be a battle. Again, that's one of those races you want to look at on election night, tomorrow night, to see how things are going to ultimately shape out. If Oliverio looks like he's skating to a victory, then I think Republicans are going to have a really good night. If it looks like it's going to be a little bit more competitive, then you might start to look at some of these other races. But what I do like about this race just kind of being a political, or not this race, but this election cycle, being a political junkie, is that this sets up 2024 in a major way. In 2024, we just talked about how in 2022, this year, we don't have a lot of stuff going on in West Virginia. No governor's race, no U.S. Senate race, that kind of thing. In 24, we've got an open governor's race. We've got a U.S. Senate race that is currently occupied by Joe Manchin. He's going to have all the money in the world if he wants to run again, and if he does, he's a fighter, and it's not going to be a layup for the Republicans. So you could have two races that are really, really competitive, and I think the election results tomorrow night will sort of set the tone for what the next year and a half is going to look like.
That's a great point, and I was getting ready to ask you, the Trump factor. We talked about this is an off-presidential election. Yep. Trump's not on the ballot. Whether he's on the ballot or not in 2 years, we'll have to wait and see. Yep. But that Trump factor, you see a lot of candidates still out there with Trump flags and saying, I'm more pro-Trump than you are. I mean, is that really still play here, or is it not as much in an off-year election?
Not as much in an off-year election. I mean, President Trump won West Virginia by 30-some points. He did. But whether it's Donald Trump or somebody like Governor DeSantis of Florida, if they're the Republican nominee in 2024, they're going to probably do really well in West Virginia, you would think. What I do think, it's interesting to watch the coattail effect. So will Donald Trump, does he still have huge coattails? Not as much as he did in 20, not as much as he did in 16. Joe Biden's approval rating in West Virginia is 27, 28%. And I think Democrats have a real challenge, especially in these local races. Democrats don't want these local races, to become nationalized. Republicans want them to be nationalized, meaning they want to attach Democrat candidates for local office to the national Democrats like Nancy Pelosi and like Joe Biden. And it's a good strategy. Whether it works or not, it remains to be seen.
So they want to play off of the opposite effect they do with the national strategy of a Republican candidate, right, where Trump is nationally popular and been popular in West Virginia. Mm-hmm. They want to tag along with him. Where Biden may not be as popular in West Virginia, they're trying to now tag the Democrats with it to have the same effect.
Yeah, and to sort of hang that albatross around their neck and say, this is the Joe Biden is the leader of the Democrat Party, and you're part of it. I think
in an off-year election, like you said, this is an off-year election. You don't have a lot of big ticket items, so to speak, at the top of the ballot. And next year we will. So hopefully that the people come out and vote for the local candidates this year, and it's more of a state local race election. But Mark, hey, we could talk for hours. You and I are political junkies. We could talk all day, a half-hour show here, but. Fascinating stuff as always, my man. Hey, give us one last prediction here as you leave. Are we predicting a big Republican sweep, or do you see some Democratic gains in certain pockets of the state? I mean, what's your final assessment of this off-year election?
I think that Republicans are, my best guess, will have a pretty good night. I don't think it's going to be, I don't think we're going to, remember when the Democrats had every seat in the state Senate but one?
Yes.
I don't think Republicans are going to have that good of a night, but I think, like I said, they'll probably get up to 27, 28 seats in the House of Delegates, something like that, which is more than they've had since the Depression. I think in the House of Delegates, you're probably
the other way
looking...
around. You're talking about the Senate, yeah, in the Senate.
Yeah, but in the House of Delegates, I think they'll probably get up to about 80, 85 seats, something like that, which is more than they've had since the Great Depression. I think nationally, there's some really competitive U.S. Senate races out there. But people would argue that this is good, that either party's not going to control the U.S. Senate but by one or two members, 52 seats, 48 seats.
Well, we'll have to sit back and wait and see and watch as the polls close here Tuesday night.
And then everybody can take a breath on Wednesday.
Take a breath. Hey, Mark, once again, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
We'll see how well you do when we come back. We'll have you back on after the election, reevaluate. Mark Blankenship, everyone, Mark Blankenship Enterprises. Thanks again. Hey, everybody, we're going to take a quick break on this edition of Outside the Echo Chamber. And when we come back, we're going to hear from both representatives, one from the state Democratic Party and one from the Republican Party. When we come back, Mike Pushkin.
We know who we are, where we have been, and where we are going. Healthcare is ever-changing, and we are evolving to meet the future needs of our community. Thomas Health is honored to announce our affiliation with the WVU Health System. WVU Health System and its network of hospitals and physicians across West Virginia Ohio, and Pennsylvania will allow Thomas Health to elevate and expand the current services we offer to this region. With broader access to specialists and subspecialists and the full support of the preeminent health system in our state, we look forward to being your first choice for medical care. Together, proudly serving our community and the state of West Virginia, today and tomorrow.
What started as the Parmar Oil Company in 1967 has grown into 116 convenience stores in 4 states. Parmar convenience stores offer monthly product specials and grab-and-go items. Located just down the street from where you live, Parmar stores are all about being your above-par convenience store. If you don't have a Parmar store near you now, you will soon. Parmar Convenience Stores, neighbors serving your community and making life a little bit easier every day.
Make sure you are informed with HD Media. We are leading the state in local, digital, and print media. We are storytellers. We focus on education, health, entertainment, politics, opinions, sports, and the outdoors through our websites, print, or social and mobile apps. We work every day to enhance the lives of our customers by informing, entertaining, and empowering our readers in the communities we serve. We are HD Media. Welcome back, everyone, to this edition of Outside the Echo Chamber. As your host, Doug Scaffier, coming to you from the Frontier Studios, home of the Charleston Gazette Mail and the HD Media Company. Hey, we've just heard from Mark Blankenship of Mark Blankenship Enterprises and his predictions and what he saw out there based on different polling data. So now we're going to talk to both the representatives. One, first up, Mike Pushkin from the State Democratic Party Chairman. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Oh, thanks for having me on.
Mike, hey, early voting has come and gone. November 8th is right around the corner. Yeah. Election Day is here. How's things looking on your front, and what has the State Democratic Party done to get to Election Day?
Well, I'm not gonna make any predictions except one, that we're not going to leave anything. We're not leaving anything on the field. We've got a tremendous slate of candidates, and the reports that I've heard all leading up to this election is that our candidates are out there working extremely hard, showing up at people's doorsteps, meeting people where they are, showing up for debates and forums. I think there's been several. I know that I've participated with you, and we look around, and only one party has shown up to answer questions and to talk to people. So I like where we are, because I think we have quality candidates that are running for the right reasons and running on real issues that affect the day-to-day lives of West Virginians.
Hey, we heard Secretary of State's office, they were on here last week, have done a lot to, educate the voters about the different amendments and stuff like that. Voter turnout, what are we doing to help increase voter turnout? What's the State Democratic Party looking at, and what do you think voter turnout might be Election Day?
Well, I mean, so far, from what we've seen from the early voting, in many parts of the state, we've got unfortunately pretty low voter turnout. And I think that's to be expected when you don't have, on the top of the ticket are constitutional amendments and not a U.S. Senate race. And we're not getting as much attention from the rest of the nation, because we don't neither of our 2 Senate seats in the U.S. Senate are up this year. But I think down here in Charleston, where we have a contested municipal race and mayoral race, I think that we've had a little better voter turnout than in other parts of the state.
And that's what Mark just said. He talked about this election being focused more on local races. It's the first time we have 100 single-member districts in the House of Delegates. Yep. We joked about just when people remember what district number they're in, we go and the legislature changes the district numbers on them. So now, first time we have 100 single-member districts. The races will be more local. So now issues, hopefully people get out and vote for the issues that are the candidates that represent them. Those multi-member districts, a lot of times you had people, who 1 or 2 votes may not affect them as much now as in a one-on-one race. Are you starting to see the same?
I think that it puts more of a spotlight on the individual candidate when they're not in a multi-member district anymore, which is basically the Republican versus the Democrat, and our ideas and our values versus that of the opponent. I do think that, and I've always been for single-member districts, because of that very reason. It makes it more about the candidate. However, I think that the lines were badly gerrymandered. A lot of these districts don't make sense geographically, and if it takes more than a couple minutes for me to explain to a voter the makeup of their district, well, then it was most likely gerrymandered. And that means it was drawn not because of where people live, but because of how they vote, how they're perceived to vote. And it's done by the party in power to protect power. And it's wrong, and it's not good for democracy.
Hey, let's talk about for a minute, we talked about in the last segment, the Trump-Biden factor. You know, you see a lot of candidates on the Republican side, they go out there and they say, I'm more Trump than the other, I'm pro-Trump. Do you think the Trump factor, and then on the flip side, the Biden factor, how does that weigh into these local races? When it comes to, you know, you see candidates out there, like, for example, Senate District 7 with Mike Stewart and Ron Stallings. It's a very highly contested race, and he's really touting the fact that he's Trump's guy.
I think it's as much as the other party, the Republican Party, would like to have this transfer of popularity onto their candidates. We rarely see that. I think, you know, we were talking before here, I was talking to Mark, that, you know, in 2018, how many times did Donald Trump come to West Virginia to do rallies for Patrick Morrisey? Yet Patrick Morrisey still lost. It's hard to transfer that type of popularity onto another candidate. And I think, personally, I think our candidates and the candidates on our side of the aisle are actually talking about local issues. We're talking about access to health care, talking about improving education, talking about roads, talking about internet, where a lot of what I see from the other side is simply about national issues. And that's why, you know, simply saying, well, I'm Trump's hand-picked candidate, well, what does that actually mean? And I know that, you know, I've seen also with the ads, you know, obviously, yes, inflation is a real thing. That's a topic that's on a lot of people's minds. That's on my mind every time I go to the grocery store, the gas pump. However, it's real not just in West Virginia, but in the rest of the country and worldwide. So I would like to know what exactly the state legislature is going to do to combat worldwide inflation. And the reality is, we both know this, absolutely nothing. The only thing that the state legislature could possibly do to offset inflation is to give tax rebates and finding ways to put money back in taxpayers' pockets. Yet every time that we've offered those bills and those ideas to give tax rebates and to put money back in working people's pockets, they've been shot down because the Republicans are more concerned with giving tax breaks to large corporations.
Well,
and that's why they're pushing for Amendment 2.
I was going to touch on the topics for a moment here. You know, as a state Democratic Party chairman, you know, what are some of the topics, you know, that you want to help and try to encourage your candidates to get out to use to get people to come out to the polls to vote for them? What are some of the key issues that you want the Democratic Party to represent in this election?
Well, what we're talking about are the issues, like I said before, that hit closer to home. You know, improving public education, improving access to health care, fighting for a living wage and a reasonable expectation when people show up to work, they should have a safe work environment to work in. And you know, fighting back against what the other side is doing, which is they run on culture war issues that really, when it comes down to it, don't really you know, mean a whole lot in the day-to-day lives of West Virginians. I mean, there's been a lot of talk from both sides of the aisle about inflation, but what has the Republican Party in West Virginia actually done to combat inflation? We have offered many ideas about tax rebates, about putting money back in people's pockets, but instead we have a special session about abortion. They just want to run on culture war issues and issues that really...
Since you mentioned abortion, talk about the abortion issue and women's rights. I mean, how does that factor in? Do you think that's going to play into this election? Do you think people are motivated to come out based on that vote and what happened in the special session?
I don't know what the main motivating factor is, but I do know a lot of people that I've talked to were very upset with a broad sweeping statewide abortion ban in West Virginia, and that's what was passed in West Virginia. It is the strictest, most extreme law in the entire nation. The exceptions are non-existent. They're a marketing ploy. There are no exceptions. And I think people don't want to see politicians like Eric Tarr making their important medical decisions for them.
So we had. Thanks for bringing that, because I know that's been a hot topic. You know, special session. We put a lot of valuable time in the legislature over the past few months on that particular issue. Let's shift gears for a minute. We got about a minute left, Mike. All right. We just heard Mark Blankenship on here. He thinks that the Republicans are going to have a good election. He thinks they're going to gain seats in the Senate and House. You, as a state Democratic Party chair, what's your take on this upcoming election here on November 8th and the results? And we wake up on Wednesday morning. How do you feel the Democrats are going to perform this year?
I think we're going to surprise a few folks. I'm not going to make any predictions. I think that our candidates are better. I think we're running on real issues. And I think the people of West Virginia are going to vote for the best candidate in the race, and I think that favors the Democrats in many of these races.
Are there any particular races you got an eye on? that you think-
You know, obviously, you know, historically the Democrats have done better in the larger population centers of the state, but we're not giving up on any district. And I know there's a few races we would have liked to have fielded candidates in. Unfortunately, you know, about this time last year, we were still just finding out what the districts were going to be. And so we were really behind the 8 ball in recruitment because we didn't know what the districts were going to look like. Obviously, the people drawing the maps, the Republicans, did know what the districts were going to look like. I can tell you, going forward, we're going to have a very robust program in recruiting candidates so people have choices up and down the ballot.
Well, Mike, it's always a pleasure having you on the show. You know, state party chair of the Democratic Party. Good luck in your election as well, too.
Good
You're
luck in
running for
yours.
re-election. Thank you.
Yeah.
And you are one of the true single-member districts there in downtown Charleston. So,
Yeah.
hey, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to hear from the state Republican Party co-chairman and see what he thinks about this upcoming election.
Great.
Good luck.
Thanks for
Have a
having me
great
on.
day.
Yep,
Thank
you too.
We'll see you right back in the next section when we talk to the co-chair of the state Republican Party when we come back.
August 5th, 2013 was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. It turned into a nightmare.
Harmony was too big for me to pass through my pelvis. They thought the best option was to put the vacuum on her.
She begged for a C-section over and over and over. They wanted to rush through it. Once Harmony came out, it probably wasn't 5 minutes. They rushed her to NIC unit, and then her head swelled the size of a watermelon. It pretty much crushed her whole skull. Ben Salengo was recommended to us by a family friend that he had represented.
Having Ben Salengo on our side changed everything for the better.
From day one, he did everything for us. He kept in touch with us pretty much on a daily basis to let us know what was going on and even just to check on us.
It gave us closure as a family, a peace, a calming feeling over us that she can rest in peace finally.
The West Virginia State Building and Construction Trades is a group of local construction trades unions and their members who work in West Virginia and the border counties of our neighboring states. We promote education and safety on job sites through our 13 registered apprenticeship programs, which are training the workers of today to construct the roads, buildings, industrial plants, and bridges of tomorrow. The West Virginia State Building and Construction Trades, building a better future for West Virginia.
Looking for a friendly bank that you can turn to in your community? Bank where the decisions on your needs are made locally. With online banking and 7 locations. Poca Valley Bank, where relationships matter.
Welcome back, everyone, to this edition of Outside the Echo Chamber. Well, as you know, early voting is over. Polls November 8th will be open from 6:30 to 7:30. Election day is upon us, and we just got done hearing from Mark Blankenship with Mark Blankenship Enterprises about some of his predictions. We just heard from Mike Pushkin, the chairman of the West Virginia State Democratic Party. And now I'm excited to have, for the first time on the show here, Tony Hodge from the co-chair of the State Republican Party, former chairman of the Putnam County Republicans. Correct? Welcome to the show, Tony.
Good to be here, Doug.
Yeah,
Thanks for having me in. Actually, current chair of the Putnam County.
Current chair. Yeah, double duties.
Yeah, double duties. So it's kind of wearing me down, but it takes hard work.
So current chair of the Putnam County Republican. You guys do pretty well down there from a Republican Party.
We do very well. We're kind of a leader as far as Republican Party politics goes in the state. So we're really proud of our work in Putnam County. We're trying to take that on to the state level.
And now you're co-chair, and talk about the other co-chair. Where's she out of?
Elgin McCardle. She's out of Ohio County, up in Wheeling. Mm-hmm. So we ran together on a ticket. She's doing a great job. So she's kind of knows the northern half of the state, and I'm real familiar with the southern half of the state. So we think we make a great team.
Well, you guys have a good starting basis to start from here, and you've had a lot of success in Putnam County. But hey, we're going to dive right into it. You know, Election day is here; it's upon us. First up, what's the state party doing to help get people out? We talked about maybe a little lower voter turnout this year. Right. We don't have a lot of big ticket items on the top of the ballot. So, what's the state Republican Party doing to help get voter turnout?
Yeah, well, Doug, you're right. There are, it is kind of lower turnout this year. We don't have a major statewide race, and so that's kind of driving the numbers down a little bit. But we don't have to do a whole lot because, quite frankly, the Democratic Party on the national level, starting with President Biden and on down, is making it a little bit easier on us. I mean, we have runaway inflation. Economists have predicted that there's probably almost a 100% chance that we go into a recession nationwide. Gas prices are higher, grocery prices are skyrocketing, going out to eat, the cost of food is just going up, up, up. So really it kind of makes our job a little bit easier than what it might normally be.
You know, you bring up a good point. We talked about this on the other segments, the kind of national politics and what does that translate to a Democrat or Republican winning here locally? Because we have a lot of 100-member, single-member districts. You got the state Senate. So we see a lot of candidates attach themselves to Trump, or President Trump, and then you see not as many Democrats attaching themselves to Biden. So do you still think that the Trump factor exists here in West Virginia and attaching to national politics is the way to go here, and that'll translate to a more of a Republican victories?
Well, I think it does to a degree. What that degree is exactly, I'm not really sure, but I think if we're talking about nationally, I think the economy. It's about the economy. And right now, nationally, the economy is not doing well. And then that translates down into the states and at the local level. So I think talking about national issues, things like that, it's the economy.
So top couple items here locally, you think in West Virginia, similar to the national is what you're saying, or is there other particular issues that the Republican Party is focusing on this year?
Well, no, I mean, economy, taxes, education's important to our voters in the area. I mean, everybody wants to have their kids educated. We saw the numbers that came out and they were low statewide, and we want to work to improve that. And whatever that takes, if it's whether it's Republican Party or bipartisan work, whatever it takes, you know, everybody's for the kids. We want to improve education in West Virginia, so that's important too.
You know, in the last segment we talked about, you had a lot of time this year. There's been a lot of stuff, a lot of positives going on in the state of West Virginia, new companies moving here, new jobs and whatnot. However, special session was occupied by the abortion and the women's right. How do you think that'll affect voter turnout, not only for the Republican Party, but just in general? Do you think people come out for that particular issue?
Well, I think the Democratic Party thought that would be, in West Virginia, they thought that would be a big issue. Even at the national level, Biden and the administration thought that. But now if you notice, they're kind of backing off of that. They're kind of going over into other issues like Social Security and things. I think their polling shows that it's really not going to bring voters out the way that they thought. And of course, in West Virginia, we know where West Virginia voters stand. We already had a constitutional ballot amendment back in, I think it was 2018, where the voters voted whether the Constitution of West Virginia would recognize abortion. And of course, they voted in favor that it would not recognize abortion. So we know where the voters stand in West Virginia. So right now, I don't know if it's that big of an issue.
So we talked about also the Republican Party, state Republican parties come out in favor. There's a lot of amendments on the ballot this year. You got 4 amendments, first time in a while. I believe you guys came out in favor of all 4 amendments. Is that correct?
We did.
Okay. Talk about that and talk about the amendments and what are you doing to educate people and why you're so strongly for all 4?
Well, all 4 amendments were passed by a supermajority of Republicans in the legislature, and we hear from, you know, our voters out there what they want. So Amendment 1 deals with separation of powers. So, you know, we had the impeachment proceedings for the Supreme Court a few years ago, and there was a little bit of crossover action between the judicial side and the legislative side, and so Amendment 1 would clear that up. Amendment 2 obviously has been talked about quite a bit.
A lot of chatter on that one.
A lot of chatter on that one. So there's differing views. You know, the one thing I want to point out about that is a lot of people want to focus on division and divisive talk and all this stuff, but what I like to do is focus on unity. What ultimately is going on here with Amendment 2 is we're arguing about what taxes to cut, and that's a good place to be in. West Virginia's in a really good place right now. I've never seen West Virginia in this position in my entire lifetime. And so I think it's really exciting. And some people have one idea of how to cut taxes. Some people have another idea. And in democracy, you know, you just come together and you work it out. And at the end of the day, I think we'll come up with the right thing. Amendment.
That's actually a good point because you have different Republicans on different sides of that issue. On Amendment 2, you get the governor on one side, and you got a couple senators, and then some of the senators pushing forward to eliminate the business inventory tax and whatnot. So it's kind of interesting. I think you hit the nail on the head. At least we're talking about tax reform. Maybe people just have a different way of getting there.
Sure. And I heard the Democratic Party Chair Mike Pushkin. He also talked about tax rebates and things like that. So everybody's looking at how to give the excess revenue back to the people.
Right.
And it's just the best way to do it. So I think that's the main thing that we need to focus on. And at the end of the day, I think we'll get there. On Amendment 3, that's dealing with incorporation of churches. I think
pretty self-explanatory there.
Yeah, we're one state out of 50 that doesn't allow it. So that's just kind of cleanup language. And Amendment 4 would give legislative oversight to what our State Board of Education does. Right now, there is no legislative oversight for the State Board of Education. And just keep in mind that it won't stifle anything at the county level, county boards of education are still intact. They're still there, right there in your local level, answer the people. But it does give some oversight at the state level, and I think that's good.
Yeah, I think that's what it comes down to, especially with 2 and 4. You hear about, is it who should be in control of it? Who should be in control of deciding their tax basis or where that money is spent? Is it the legislature or the local municipalities? In some counties, it's affected more than others. To be honest, some of the business inventory tax that's collected in some of the larger counties and some of the rural counties, it's probably not that big a deal to them. So it'll be interesting to see, because I believe what Mark Blankenship said, that's pretty close. That's Amendment 2 is. It could go either way on election day, so we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, that's one I can't make a prediction on. I think we'll get it, but too hard to tell.
Hey, let's shift gears for a couple minutes. Let's talk about, we got a lot of amendments. We also have a lot of great candidates on the ballot right here. Are there any particular races that you kind of got your eye on, or you think are going to be really close, and or some that you kind of think that you're going to win or feel good about?
Well, one thing that stands out to me, and I think you touched on it earlier in the program, the race with Mike Stewart and Ron Stallings, Senate District 7. That's a pretty interesting race. Two good candidates. Obviously, we favor Mike, but 2 good candidates. It'll be interesting to see how that one falls. Senate District 10 over in the Greenbrier County area.
Oh, okay.
You have Stephen Baldwin is the Democratic leader in the Senate, and he has a Republican challenger in Vince Deeds, and we think Vince is going to pull that one off. So that one's interesting to watch. And up north, I think is it Senate District. Let's see, up north we have Mike Oliverio.
That's 13.
And 13.
Yep. 13.
And Barbara Fleschauer. And that's another one that we're keeping a close eye on. That's on the Senate side. On the House side, locally we have Andrew Anderson and Kayla Young. That's one we're keeping an eye on. Up north we have Delegate Zukoff and the challenger there. His name's slipping my mind.
Yeah, I can't remember his name either.
Put on the spot. But anyway, we hope to. That's up in the northern Panhandle, Moundsville. Charles Sheedy. That's it.
That's right.
And so that's one that we hope to flip. And there's others around the state, but just off the top of my head, that's ones that come to mind.
And those are the ones that you think are closer races. So local to home here in Kanawha County, Putnam County. Putnam County usually does pretty well when it comes to electing their Republican candidates.
Yeah, I mean, we don't take anything for granted. We do work hard in Putnam County, and that's why we often win. We work very hard, and we're working very hard, and nothing's taken for granted.
So without giving out specifics, do you see a gain in the state Senate, gain in the House of Delegates? Do you see staying the same, staying the course, or what's the state Republican outlook for this election?
Oh, we will gain in the state Senate for sure. The House, we will definitely maintain a supermajority, and I think we'll gain.
Gain some seats in the House.
Yeah.
Well, good. Well, there you have it. Thanks for being on the show, Tony. Co-chair of the State Republican Party and current chair of the Putnam County, and you're also part of the commission down there as well too. And you work really close with those guys. I know you do.
Well, I'm on the zoning board.
On the zoning board, yeah.
It's a citizen-led zoning board, so I'm on that.
So
I like to stay involved. I love public service.
I just knew you had a lot going on. Is what I was trying to say. You work closely with the county county entities down there, as well as your state party. So best of luck to you all in this election, November 8th. Maybe we'll have you guys back on here in a couple weeks and see if everybody's predictions came through and some of the surprises maybe and some of the big wins for y'all. So thanks again for being on the show.
Thank you, Doug.
Appreciate all you're doing.
Thank you.
Hey everybody, you just heard it from the state party co-chair here from the Republican Party. We're going to take a quick break on this edition of Outside the Echo Chamber, and then we'll wrap up when we come back.
It's time for a Labor Day tents event. This is our biggest event ever with the most cards and the most offers.
We've got 4 locations of inventory. Not only are we selling at our main lots, but we've got tents at the Kanawha Mall and the Old Sport Mart Plaza. Every test drive is a chance to win $1,000. Buy a car and get your choice of $1,000 cash, no payments until 2023, 250 gallons of gas, or take a bigger discount.
With the best trade-in figures powered by Kelley Blue Book Instant Cash Offer, you can get the best deals of the year.
Go to TopJ4.com and see for yourself.
Thanks for joining us, everyone, on this edition of Outside the Echo Chamber, where our main purpose is to give you a deeper dive into all the issues. Big thanks to our guests today. We had Mark Blankenship from Mark Blankenship Enterprises. He's always out there. He could talk politics all day long, polling the data and what's going on. We'll have him back on after the election and see how well he did. Big thank you to Mike Pushkin, who's state party chairman of the Democratic Party, and big thank you to Mr. Tony. He's got his hands in everything when it comes to the Republican Party, but he is the co-chair of the state Republican Party. It was great hearing his perspective. So regardless of what side you're on, regardless of who your candidate is or where you are in the amendment, it's important to get out there and vote. Get out there and vote. A lot of money being spent to help educate the voters, but it doesn't matter if you don't get out there and exercise your right. Once again, thanks again, everybody. This will be out there on our websites. This show will be archived out there. Go to Outside the Echo Chamber at hdmediallc.com if you'd like to send us your comments, your feedback. Tell us what you'd have. We have fantastic staff at HD Media from the Charleston Gazette-Mail, the Herald Dispatch, and all of our Southern West Virginia papers. We will be covering the election head to toe, providing those results online at all of our websites, and be sure to check out the newspaper on Wednesday, November 9th, day after the election, for all the winners and results of this year election, 2022 general election in the state of West Virginia. Have a great day, everybody, and remember, get out there and vote.